when they actually spend their time listening to this show, what does it mean? It means we're winning.
I'm white, and I've got everything I need. No one clutches their purses when they're in a room alone with me. And I can drive for any neighborhood I please at any hour, and the police don't do a thing. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got everything I need. I'm a guy getting paid more than a girl with a degree. And I can walk down the streets after dark, no one wants to rape me. And I can get a girl pregnant and just as easily flee. Just like my straight white male dad did to me. So if I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. I've got a pile of broken mirrors and I'm walking under ladders and I'm spilling tons of salt, but to me that doesn't matter, cause my skin and my gender and my orientation are the best things to have if you live in this nation. I recommend it highly. If I see a penny on the ground, I leave it alone and fucking flip it. I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need. Shit's gonna work out for me, cause I'm a straight white male in America. I've got all the luck I need.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Intellectual Dollar Tree. We do the show live every, Wednesday? On Twitch. That's twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. I'm producer Dave. You can find me on Grindr.
I'm HK Perrin. You can find me on Mastodon at hperrin at port87.social. Not on Twitter anymore. I went on there recently to download an archive of my account because I don't ever plan on going back to it. I'm debating whether I should just delete that account, but then I lose the handle.
I have no such luxury, sir. I have to continue to promote this and other shows that we do.
I am very sorry about that.
That's all right. Whatever. I logged into Twitter today, and it told me I'd reached my rate limit of posts.
They're rate limiting now.
No, it was broken.
I mean, I guess they always were, but
it was broken.
Oh,
because it was the first thing I did when I woke up. I forgot I was like going to post something maybe about this show, or maybe no, I saw something and I quote tweeted, I was calling somebody a dumb fuck, as you do. And then it wouldn't let me do that. And it wouldn't let me see my notifications. And then an hour later it was all fixed. And that was because Elon fixed it, probably.
That reminds me, I went to go into Twitter on my tablet recently and it didn't work. And I was thinking like, oh, well, I haven't been like, it showed me a login screen. And I was like, well, I haven't opened the Twitter app on my tablet in like 2 months, so it probably just logged me out. And I tried to log in and it didn't work. It just put me back to the same login screen. And I did that like 2 times, still didn't work. And then my tablet was like, hey, you need to update. So I updated my tablet and then it came back up. So now it's running Android 13. And then I opened Twitter and now it works. So I'm guessing either there was a bug with Android 12 with Twitter, or maybe there was a bug that only lasted a few minutes that I hit.
More likely coincidence, really, because I'm like my phone still works on. I'm on an old fucking phone. I think I'm on like Android 10 or 11 or something. So anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about, although I'm sure it'll come up in the content we're talking about. I'm sure Elon will come up. We had fired these people last year in long form, but as you know, unless we Austin Bennett rule somebody, everybody gets a little bit of everybody gets a mulligan at the first of the year. We unfire everyone except for people that we fired for like the Austin Bennett rule, where we had to fire him because we were just watching a man and his family go into like a death spiral. And it's just some kind of energy we don't want to put out there in the world. You're free to check in on Mr. Austin Bennett, by the way, if you'd like on your own. I haven't done so. I hope that he gets the help that he needs, or that his family gets the fuck away from him. Speaking of people whose family
I hope he's doing better than he was.
Speaking of people whose children might never talk to them again after they become 18, we're going to watch episode 160 of the Dark Horse podcast with Bret Weinstein and Heather Hying. Or 160, I'm sorry. Well, their beginning sure is interesting. Oh. Man, our wait music.
5-minute countdown at the beginning of their podcast.
And it's just this loop, this loop too, like our fucking music that you have to listen to while you wait for the show is actually sometimes better than the show. Especially today, we got to hear "Everywhere's an Island" by the Roughies, which is still not released. Although we're going to do something pretty cool with Fourth Wall, our shop, and the Roughies coming up pretty soon. Stay tuned, everybody. It's just the same loop.
Yeah, this is terrible. Terrible production value.
They should like put some Eric Weinstein's music on there because he plays the guitar. He tried to play guitar with some famous guy. He was like, "Oh, let me on stage with you," and he's like, "Let me on your podcast." And he's like, "Well, no," because he knew the guy was going to make fun of him on the podcast. And he shut down the portal like a week later.
So this is a YouTube video, right?
Well, we're watching it on Odyssey.
Was this streamed live or?
Yes.
It got to 0 and it just. Oh man.
I mean, ours does that too. But the thing is, we're playing a song.
We don't claim to have amazing production values, though. I mean, you do have good production values, but like...
Wait, why did they start the timer again? Heather just pinching one off or something?
She's like, I need another 30 seconds.
It's their kid's fault. Their kid's not going to get any allowance this week. The 5 minutes is ostensibly there so people can jump into the channel and stuff. That's why we do 10 minutes before.
But like they uploaded this with like the super long intro. Why not cut out the intro before you upload it?
They're also live on Odyssey, so this is like a live replay, actually.
Okay.
Hey folks, welcome to the Dark Horse Podcast live stream. It's number 160, isn't it?
It is.
It's number 160.
Is that Prime?
That is not Prime for...
Whoa, what a dumb quiz. What, it ends at a 0. Of course it's not a Prime number.
Yeah. It's... How many things is it divisible by? It's divisible by 10. It's
2.
divisible by 5. It's divisible by 80.
4.
Yeah, it's divisible by 4 and 40.
16, 8.
Oh my God.
At least one reason.
We're the ultimate math nerds.
Our producer, our son Zach, this morning. If it was
Oh, they blamed it on their son.
like a million reasons, and then we started trying to figure out exactly how many reasons there are that it's not Prime.
Yeah, it's either one or a small handful, but
It's a handful. It's more than a
Wait, what? How many reasons there are something is not Prime?
There's only one reason that it's not Prime. As soon as you find another thing that it's divisible by.
Yeah. Does she mean how many other numbers than itself and 1 it is divisible by? Because like if you have like one more number than itself and 1, it's already not Prime. That's the reason it's not Prime. Having more numbers doesn't mean it's like even more not Prime.
More obviously, it's more obviously not Prime if it ends in 0, though.
Yeah, it's very obviously not Prime if it ends in 0.
Or even if it's just an even number.
all right. I am Dr. Bret Weinstein. You are Dr. Heather Hying, and
Yes, we are.
We are the Dark Horses in residence of this podcast.
Indeed, we
And
are.
yeah.
And today we're going to talk just a little bit about the moon. We're going to talk about
Oh, do they think the moon's real?
categories and things like sports and awards for things.
Oh, are they going to talk about the fucking the demons at the Grammys or whatever that was? There was like a fucking devil worshiping shit that everybody was freaking out about.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
about
There was
how
devil
to
worshipping
not
at the
let
Grammys, or perceived devil worshipping?
There was a satanic panic about the Grammys.
Okay.
happened over the last 3 years, or depending on the framing, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, happen again. And so we're going to finish with that. We might actually finish with dogs, but we're
I'm not finished with dogs. I
No,
love
no,
dogs
no.
For
That's-
all their uncouthness.
indeed, actually, maybe we're going to lead with this. We're going to lead with dogs.
Leading dogs, that's
Yeah.
a natural.
Yeah, we're gonna lead with dogs.
Our people have been doing that for 30,000 years.
Right.
Uncouth is a weird way to describe a dog.
First, some logistics for top.
I mean, it's not inaccurate. It's
You
just
can now
weird.
follow Dark Horse on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. We follow these live streams with live Q&A. You can ask questions at darkhorsesubmissions.com.
I have a lot of questions.
Encourage you to pick up our book, Hunter Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, coming to many more languages soon.
That's a bag.
And we have
It's not your book.
our store is darkhorsestore.org, has great products, including
Oh my God, they're selling a tote bag.
Epic Tabby tote bag. I thought about
They're like
putting
NPR.
Tabby in the tote bag because, like some cats, he actually.
I think I'm going to start, you know, when I talk to people about my cat, I'm going to
together.
describe her in like very
hard
weird
to fold
ways.
the sheets after you have
Be
laundered.
like, this is my cat.
cat likes to
She's
get in the
never
sheets.
committed tax fraud.
around and
Agitated.
yeah, yes, he likes. Yes, you do not ever put your cat in the dryer. But if he likes to be agitated, consider putting him in your sheets.
Yep.
Yes.
What?
Hey, wait, they're not in a wood room. What happened to the wood room?
I think they got a new house or something. I don't know.
Oh,
Find me at Natural Selection.
I would have thought that like if they were buying a new house, an entirely wooden room would have been like one of their absolute requirements.
The other thing that might have just been a set, and they just got a new set.
This set makes me sad. Can you imagine the Property Brothers episode where they go in and they're like, you see, we do a podcast. We have a certain standard. Like halfway through the episode, the Property Brothers be like, you two are fucking unbearable.
I wish we would have had, if they did move, I wish we would have had the money to buy their house that they were selling.
With the wood room.
Yeah.
And as always, we want to thank you, our audience, and we'll spend a little bit of time exploring who our audience is later today. But
Well,
we are very
kooks.
grateful to you for subscribing, for
Racists,
sharing,
conspiracy
for
theorists,
liking,
anti-trans people.
When you do like what
People
you
who sniff their own
You can
farts.
find us on YouTube and Odyssey, our whole episodes and our clips. And of course, the whole episodes also go out to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that you listen to audio. You had something to add?
No.
No, definitely
Never.
not.
It's not my way.
Oh, is that right? Is that right?
Well, this is called
You
banter.
can join one
Don't you wish we had this kind of rapport?
conversation with a small group.
I
of
wouldn't call this
patrons
banter.
This morning, you'll have another one tomorrow. We do a private Q&A for patrons of mine on my Patreon, and people on both of our Patreons can join our Discord server, where there's just a remarkable number of really excellent people across all of the demographic.
Is it worth $5 to go in there and get screenshots from their Discord server?
Conversations in text, audio, video,
I'd say probably not.
doing karaoke, doing all sorts of great stuff. So we encourage you to join up with one of our Patreons and find the Discord server there. And of course, we have sponsors. Top of the hour, every week, we have.
Hey, we get to skip their sponsors. Nice of them to give a little green border so that we know exactly how far to skip.
They know we're watching. But it would be nice to know what companies not to patronize, I suppose. They're running a really shitty ad. They're not putting any like the company names on the screen.
You were saying February.
I don't think I would boycott
let's call
a company for sponsoring Bret and Heather. I would shame them publicly, like on social media. But I don't know if I'd boycott them. I actually do boycott a company that I saw on what's the name? Jeremy the Quartering.
Yes.
Displate sponsored him, so I don't order from Displate,
Okay, so
which is sad because they have cool products.
the full moon is imminent.
Yes.
Those of you who live in a place,
But the
where you
quartering's a
can
little different than
see
Bret and Heather. The quartering is like much more
and don't have to
harmful.
work that hard to
in
see
my
it, will
opinion.
recognize it has been waxing now for close to 2 weeks, and maybe you didn't notice 2 weeks ago because I think we've said this before, but like the solstices and the equinoxes, at the solstices, the day length is relatively stable, even though there is a day at which, it is a day in the Northern Hemisphere in June 21st ish, where the sun.
They're not really going to explain this
longest
solstice
moment
in
of the year, and a
fucking
day either
equinox,
side
are they?
shorter, but the change
they
is
are.
slow, and the change is slow at the winter solstice as well, whereas it's really fast at the equinox. Like we're getting into the time of year now, getting to a point where the rate of change is happening faster, and the moon phases
Is it?
feel very similar. That at new,
I don't
and
think that's
full,
true. Is
they
that true?
They kind of stick.
I don't know.
There's no moon at all for some days, and there's a really very, very close to full moon for 4 or 5 days. So anyway, the official full moon is tomorrow, February 5th, but it is so.
I mean, I guess it does slow and stop and go the other way, in terms of like daylight. So I guess she is right that it seems to go slower, but it's accelerating at the same rate.
Yeah, I'm really excited at the prospect of getting bogged down in this particular factoid. Can you tell?
It's interesting. That raises a point, though, because you correct me if I've got this wrong, but the rate at which what is the line at which the dawn or dusk line on the moon must move at a perfectly regular or a near perfectly regular rate around the moon. It won't be perfectly regular because the orbit of the moon isn't perfectly circular, but it ought to move at a consistent rate. But our vantage point here makes it look like it is moving slower as it approaches full or new, right?
Oh boy. Well, but our view of it is.
This is great. They're just sense making about something they could have looked up before the show. Like they literally, like you and I, like during the day, we have shit to do. These people, they don't have shit to do during the day. They could have looked this up.
I mean, he is right in that, like, towards the edge of the moon, you're seeing more of the moon for the same horizontal distance across your vision. So he's right, but the way he explained it was really bad.
Not just about us and the moon. It's also about us. It's also about the sun the sun's position relative to it.
I think that's actually going to be a very tiny contributor here. I agree it is a contributor. And actually that predicts it ought to be different in the spring and the fall. But I guess my point would be, if you were to count,
like, who's watching this and hanging on their every word right here,
of miles per Earth day that the position of the transition from light to dark on the moon moves, it should be about the same each day. But the point is, when you are looking edge on, that motion across a fixed number of miles on the surface of the moon looks like it is not very much change at all, because you're looking at an angle.
I'm not sure this is the explanation. And here I am using.
It is. It's literally what I just described too, and it's like painfully obvious that that's the explanation. So if she doesn't think that that's the explanation, then she's just wrong.
But again, like I said to you, I'm incredibly excited at the prospect of you and I getting hung up on this. And most importantly, they had nothing to do all day, so they could have said, "Hey, we're going to talk about like how we perceive the moon and the sun as the orbits happen, and we're going to look it up so that we can explain something to our audience." But instead, they're sitting here sense making.
I am interested to find out her explanation for this, if she thinks that explanation is wrong.
Yeah, I sure am too, HK. I sure am too.
Data from others, which is to say a moon app. And the moon app that I like shows the percentage of fullness of the moon each day. And while it is at 100% tomorrow, it's at something like 99.7% today.
Yep.
And the day after it's at 100%, it's again above 99%.
Right.
And, it's only a 28-day cycle entirely. So it's only a 14-day cycle to get from completely full to completely not full. And it's incrementally a much tinier change near full and near new.
Right. But that is from our perspective.
Yeah.
And so I think actually it's going to be almost perfectly regular in its, if you were to look down on the moon, for example, then you would see it is a perfectly regular or an almost perfectly regular cycle around the moon. It is only
Around the moon?
If you were looking down,
Oh my God, how long are they going to spend on this?
so you've got half the moon is lit. And the degree to which that swings across the moon
Oh my God.
changes our perspective. That rate is constant.
I think what they need is a toilet paper roll, actually. That would help explain this. That's the other Weinstein. I'm sorry.
You're looking at the edge of the moon is not going very far from your perspective, from your two-dimensional perspective. It's the two-dimensional transition that causes that, I think.
Maybe. I'm not convinced of this because I did not model out in my head the three bodies. And also
She's just wrong. Because, okay, let's say it was something else, then it would be different at different times of the year. But it's not.
Change what we see, like it's not also like we're always seeing exactly the same view of it,
yeah.
right? But that so tidally locked means that it's
What's going on in the background? Is somebody doing dishes while they're also producing their show?
The same thing as its year. its actual day is the same thing as its year if we count the year as
It's a one full rotation around the Earth.
around the Earth.
It definitely seems
I
like
don't know the
their
different
set got
ellipses and where they
downgraded.
are relative to one another of the Earth's orbit around the sun or the moon's orbit around the Earth. So
And it's interesting. They're both sitting far enough away from their mic that they might as well just put a mic in between them and turn up the gain on it.
that explanation is right. I think it. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, people seem to find every single thing we get wrong, plus a bunch of stuff that we didn't actually get wrong. So we are liable to get feedback that will tell us.
But I'm not even sure what either of you just said.
But I'm not sure there's a one way or the other here. I think even if what you said is true, it's not going to be the only thing that is contributing to how it is that we perceive.
Well, I agree. There's a slight.
Pretty sure it is.
Because,
It's the only thing that's contributing in any meaningful way.
I can't quite do it, but yeah. Sorry, I've disrupted your.
And moving on,
Yeah.
Brett and Heather, moving on.
I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you tell time on the moon, which is actually kind of deep in the weeds, and I'm not. Maybe we just shouldn't do it at all now because I feel like this has gotten already.
I mean, the moon has a day.
Maybe
Its
they
day
should-
is just really long.
Maybe they should go to the moon.
And I'm not. You know what? Let's.
Its day is one lunar cycle.
Maybe you can,
So its day is like
go into the
28 days, 28 point something days.
Well, I have something. If you
let's do.
Does she not know that the moon has days?
an odd story that I don't want to focus on led me to something that I think we ought to talk a little bit about. The odd story is somebody erroneously accused me of plagiarism on the internet. They tried to coin a hashtag, and then it turned out that I had in fact said the thing that they claimed I had copied from them before they ever said it. So not only did I not get it from them, but the order was reversed.
What?
The reason I
So
mention it,
it was an unwitting plagiarist claiming that you had plagiarized them, or were they unwitting?
I think it was a canonical. The phrase was I had said that the Omicron virus had appeared to be frozen in time. And the person concluded that I must have gotten that from them. They had another piece of evidence, which also doesn't establish this, but it turned out I had said it online before they had.
In what way does it appear to be frozen in time?
That's
irrelevant. The problem is that someone was mean to Brett
consideration here.
and that he was
Does he
right.
mean that there's no other variants than the Omicron variant?
That they are a white nationalist or anything like this.
Because, I mean, that's like saying there's no other mammals than mammals.
Because in interaction...
Like, sure, but there are a lot of different kinds of mammals.
Plagiarism, these people showed up, and my being Jewish was important to them.
Oh, good.
So anyway,
That's always fun.
That was disturbing.
Yes.
But
Or
that was
actually-
really disturbing.
More aptly, it's like saying there are no other humans than Homo sapiens. And that
So,
is true. That is very true.
So
just because we're the
thing
last
that Brett's
ones left.
the thing that Brett's talking about here is that he had an interaction with someone, and that they were very focused on the fact that he was Jewish, as many conspiracy theorists are. Bret and Heather, of course, not prone to spreading conspiracy theories that a lot of people would, link back to false claims about Jewish people. They would never do such a thing. So Bret's like stunned that a conspiracy theorist that he ran into was really concerned that his last name was Weinstein because, Bret's got his finger on the pulse.
Thing happened. Something about my having interacted with those people online kicked me over into Nazi Twitter. Something that I did not know existed.
So some algorithm starts showing you Nazi tweets.
Isn't all of Twitter Nazi Twitter now?
About white nationalist stuff. I'm not talking about race realism, right?
He's like, we platform those people. He's like, he's like, those are our friends.
I'm not talking about diet Nazis.
He's like, I'm not talking about the bell curve. I'm talking about the protocols. All right.
Those things are bad enough. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about actual Nazi Twitter.
Wait, those things are bad enough? Race realism? Those things are... Wait, you're friends with Jordan Peterson and fucking Steven Pinker. What are you talking about? Those people traffic in what he would refer to, I guess, deridingly here as race realism.
And he was friends with Sam Harris. And the only reason he's not friends with Sam Harris is because of Sam Harris. He still wants to be friends with the race and IQ guy.
Videos of the Fuhrer making nice with children that have been put together with soaring, wistful music.
Really?
Didn't know it was on there. Shocked to discover it.
Yeah.
So anyway, on the one hand, my point would be, Nazi Twitter exists. Real Nazi Twitter. Real Holocaust denying.
Wait a minute. How can he... I thought these people were like cultural critics and shit. How can you not know that exists out there? Are they all of a sudden going to go, well, maybe the people on the left who were talking about Nazis have a point?
I'm guessing he's being... I'm guessing he's exaggerating right now, because how could you not know that there are Nazis on Twitter? Like, even before Elon, they were fairly prevalent and they made their voices heard. They were very annoying.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe because he was verified before, he was maybe filtering out people who weren't verified. But then that doesn't make sense either, because he quote tweeted me about like a year and a half ago or some shit, tried to send his dork fans after me, and that didn't go so well, though. A lot of them ended up blocking me. But I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine that he didn't know that stuff was on there.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't know, then maybe we shouldn't listen to anything he says about like the state of political discourse on the internet.
Yeah, very true.
Your loving Twitter is a real thing. But the more important thing, I thought, even beyond that shocking discovery, was that it exists. And the way Twitter functions, I was completely unaware of it.
Yeah.
Wasn't surprised there were white nationalists, but I was surprised to see the depth of this. And so I do think it raises, there are several things that have worked this way, right? So Elon did a bunch of work to get rid of pedophile Twitter.
No, he didn't. He said that he did.
Is that true?
No.
I literally just saw a news article saying Elon claimed that he was going to, and yet there's still a lot of that crap on Twitter.
Not only that, he got rid of the team that monitors that shit.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing, their friend Jordan Peterson had this weird tweet about how he was able to find that kind of material. And I'm like, oh, you're telling on yourself a little bit there, aren't you, buddy? I ain't looking for that shit.
Like if I say, hey, I stopped all murder. I did it. No more murder, you guys. Problem solved.
Then you fire
would he believe me then?
Well, then you fire the entire homicide department in your police department.
Yeah. But like, not even that. Like, would he believe me? Well, if I just said it?
No, it's literally
like whatever Elon says, this guy will buy.
No, that's literally the analogy. It's literally the analogy, because then there's no one to like investigate whether or not there was a homicide. So it's literally the same thing.
Yeah. If we just stop testing, there will be no more COVID.
That's right.
Where that stands, because pedophile Twitter isn't something I was aware of until that furor erupted. Furor is a bad term in this discussion, but
It's spelled differently.
oh, good. I'm rarely thankful for such things, but in this case, I
And I
am.
think really it's pronounced,
Wait, is
Differently as well.
Nazi Twitter and pedophile Twitter the same Twitter?
But anyway,
Right. Because he just like, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he's saying here. He's like, I thought Elon said he got rid of he's like, I encountered problem A, and I thought Elon had said he got rid of problem B. And it's like, well, okay.
Okay, so he's not saying he saw that part of Twitter. He's
No.
saying Elon said he got rid of it.
No, he's saying that Elon got rid of it.
Okay. I was a little confused there.
Jordan Peterson is the one who said that he was able to find that kind of content, and which is probably why the psychological whatever licensing agency of Canada was like, whoa, buddy, we're going to go ahead and take a closer look at what you're up to on the internet.
anyway, okay.
Like, just take your search history and forward that to the FBI.
Yes. But okay, so the point is there are aspects of Twitter that would cause a normal person to absolutely shudder in horror. And these things, it's as if, you are riding on the bus with, murderous thugs who you don't know are there. And they're, making eye contact.
I mean, you don't really know anything about the other people on the bus.
Plotting whatever it is they're plotting. And I'm not making an argument here.
That's really true, actually. Yeah, you very well might
But I
be.
am making an argument that it is vitally important that to the extent that these...
I bet neither of these people have been on public transportation in 10 years.
Probably.
Although I don't know, they live in Portland. The max is pretty good. Maybe they do take it places.
Maybe they think that if you go on a bus, you have to wear a name tag that says, "Hi, I'm a mass murderer."
Well, I don't even want to ponder what their name tag would have to say.
communities arise
Hi, don't sit anywhere near us. We're insufferable.
and live in our midst. It's kind of important that we know that they're there.
I'm
is true.
gonna take my chances with the mass murderer over there.
This is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Is that what you got?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
that's...
So we were going to talk about different award categories by sexes. If
Oh, here we go. Transphobia.
yes,
ready. Just whenever
okay.
you need it.
This is just not going well today. I don't know what we're trying to do.
If you would have maybe thought about your show and took down some notes or something, I do it on Sunday, for example. I do it on Sunday and I do it on Tuesday for our show about local news. If you would have done just even the bare minimum amount of preparation for your show, maybe you would have some idea what you were doing, because this is literally all you have to do. And to be fair, on Sunday, all I really have to do is get ready for our Sunday show. But on Tuesday, I have other shit to do. But I have help on Tuesday.
We talk about this, or do we want to talk about what he's doing? Okay. So this, and you can, unfortunately, we're in Twitter again. Zach, you can show this for a moment, my screen. This is actually from a few weeks ago. This is a tweet about a Guardian article. I look forward to a time where award shows can be reflective of the society we live in, is a quote from the Guardian article. That's Sam Smith saying that at the Brits in 2021, wish granted, ? This year, our sexist society is reflected so brilliantly that no women are nominated for Best Artist. Bravo, genderists. Okay, if I may have my screen back for a moment, Zach. Actually, no, I'll hold on to my screen. So the article that the Guardian has written and has this quote. The award ceremony.
What does she mean? Does she mean when her screen is on the screen, she can't see her screen?
I don't know. That's weird.
It's
Who knows what kind
Just
of
set it to mirror.
Who knows what kind of fucking weird system they're using?
The photographic industry, BPI, did away with the Best British Male and Best Female awards in 2022, following criticism that the non-binary pop star Sam Smith would not be eligible for either prize despite their massive commercial success.
Why don't you just let them both be eligible? Let them be eligible for both.
2 years running now,
Or no. There's an easy way to do that. There's an easy way to do this. If you have like a hit song or like a hit album or whatever, they were going to reach out to you. They're like, you're going to be nominated in one of these categories. We have two. Which do you feel is like most closely represents like who you are?
Or how about this? If there is an NB in your award nominees, then just take those categories and turn them into, take either of those categories or both of those categories and turn them into one.
That's what they
just
did
for that category.
That's what they did. There's best artist.
Not permanently, just that year.
This is stupid though. I don't think they did it just for that. I think I don't know why they did it, but this is really dumb. They're like, I don't know, these people, I don't think they even enjoy music. Did you hear the music at the beginning of their show?
The downstream effect of that has been there have been no women.
Or you can just have a new category, best non-binary artist.
Categories. And so there's concern, obviously, that out of deference to the new fiction, which it is, of
transphobia.
Go for it, abandon your gender norms, but you're still male or female. So this new fiction of non-binary as a meaningful descriptor of identity is replacing male and female, which are biological realities, people. Women will once again get less recognition for their work, right? As NBs, as
there's a lot to unpack right there. Gender is not a biological reality. That someone feels male or female is not biological. And to the extent it is, it's in the brain. I'm not in the loins.
I'm just telling you that they condensed this. I bet they condensed it down for fucking time. You know what I mean? There were probably practical concerns for the reason why that they got rid of best male and best female. And one of them may have been that there are trans men, trans women, and non-binary people, and that they just didn't want to accidentally misgender somebody when they were trying to like give out an award for their art.
Possibly. But like what she's saying is really fucking pissing me off, because she's conflating biological sex and gender. I will agree. Biological sex is biological. Hence why we call it biological sex. But gender, which is not the same thing, like little equal sign with a slash through it, not the same thing. Or if you're a programmer, a little equal sign and then an exclamation point. Not the same thing as biological sex. Gender and biological sex are different. Usually they match up, but not always. And biological sex is also not binary.
Right. We've talked about this. I don't want to get too deep into this. It's a bimodal distribution, and it really is going to depend on how you define it.
Yep. Yeah, there are a million definitions for what is a male and what is a female in biology. I'm not even talking about like in like the gender critical people who have all sorts of fucking definitions. I'm talking about in biology, the people whose job it is to label an animal as male or female. They have a bunch of different definitions that will apply at different times when you want to consider different things about the animal.
So, my take here is they're mad. I don't know. I mean, I feel like the reason that the categories were collapsed were probably some combination of, we want to include more categories, so we're going to collapse this down for time. And honestly, what if they just didn't want to misgender somebody accidentally by sending them a nomination for like the wrong like gender category? Like, you know what I'm saying? They just didn't want to, like, they're trying to heap praise on someone for their artistic endeavors. So in the process of doing that, you don't really want to insult them.
Yeah.
So, and now they're like, oh, well, now the best artists this year, like it's all men, but they're also including a non-binary person in their all men thing, which is gross, actually.
Then it's not all men.
Sometimes like to be called, begin to take spots that would have been spots that women are getting. So I see this as...
Did they say all men or did they say no women?
May have said no women.
Because that would be
people who
true,
think
because a
that
non-binary
gender
person
more
is not a
important
woman.
than sex, and are making up categories. And
I mean, unless they
obliterating
identify as a
reality
woman, which is also perfectly valid.
Very much so. Basically coming in and taking some of the many hard-won rights of women. That is absolutely true. But this prompted me to think more, actually, about categories of sex in the first place in various domains. So in sport, we have male and female category. And yes, obviously, actually, and there's still a lot of people fighting this fight, and I'm in that fight sometimes, and somehow this isn't totally obvious to everyone, but if really, unless you were born yesterday, this should be obvious, right? There's a reason there are different categories for men and women in sport. No amount of hormone disruption, blocking, enhancement of cross-sex hormone, surgery can erase elite male advantage if you went through puberty as a male, right? So that's one thing. And at least in competitions,
to a certain extent, she is right, but that really doesn't matter, because there are also other categories of things that give you a certain advantage, and we don't disparage people because of those categories.
And like, not for nothing, most athletes never reach the rarefied atmosphere that she's talking about. You know what I'm saying? Like, most people do sports for fun and for exercise, and this stuff they're talking about really ends up fucking discouraging a lot of those people who were just going to go join a fucking basketball league or like a local swim competition or whatever, where the stakes aren't really that high and this shit doesn't matter.
But like, what I'm talking about is like, let's say there's a man who is 7'8", right? He's 7 feet 8 inches tall. And he goes into Olympic basketball, right? Does he have an unfair advantage?
So actually, someone who's that tall would probably have a disadvantage in most aspects of basketball.
Okay, well, let's say the optimal height, whatever it is, 7'2" or whatever.
It's probably like my height, around 6 feet. Because otherwise,
definitely taller than you.
Otherwise, no other, like, you
Olympic
have to be. It's not just about how close you are to the basket, dude. You have to be able to dribble. And if you're super high off the ground, there's a lot more time between. There's like a lot more space between when you push the ball down to the ground and it comes back up to your hand for somebody to steal the ball.
Well, I'm talking about like there's someone with genetics that are seemingly built for their sport, right?
Sure.
Is it unfair that they have those genetics?
I mean, sure. Yes, it's unfair, but like the problem is that's not like we're first of all, we're talking past each other, but secondly, I think you're talking past what they're talking about, and they're just talking about their own bigotry, and they're trying to justify their own bigotry against trans people by bringing up like the rarefied atmosphere of like the very top levels of sport and music.
That's what I'm talking about is, if someone has a genetic advantage in a sport, we don't call it unfair. Like, I wouldn't call that unfair for a basketball player to do very well because he's very tall, or for a runner to do very well because they have, the genetic makeup that predisposes them to run very fast, to have the sort of skeletal and muscular structure to run very fast. I wouldn't say like disqualify them from competing in the Olympics because they have a genetic advantage. No, I wouldn't say that at all. Just like I wouldn't say that a trans woman who was born a man, was born male,
identified male
just
at birth,
because they have a genetic advantage over, an average cis woman, doesn't mean that we should disqualify them from competing in women's sports.
Also, just on a practical level, you're not going to find a lot of examples of trans women going into any sport and dominating the sport.
Yeah. But like, if we ban them, should we ban cis women who have elevated testosterone?
Well, that's the thing is there are people who are actually, there are folks who have gotten caught up in that, because again, bigotry never just hurts the target of the bigotry. It splashes over onto other people.
Yep. Yeah. So she's getting into like this very
you can't have
iffy territory of like, we need to ban these people because of their genetics.
co-ed sports. And I've written about, and we've talked about, for instance, how much we both loved and we sometimes played competitively co-ed ultimate frisbee. And of course, there's mixed doubles in tennis. You know, there are co-ed sports where they can make sense, but it has to be an explicit expectation, right? So, okay, so sport, different categories for male and female in sport. Yes.
Well, I want to pause you because the question is, I am obviously an advocate for the same thing, that such a category should exist. But the question is really, why do we do that?
Okay, but I'm getting there.
Oh, okay.
So different categories in sport, yes, male and female. Different categories in acting, actor and actress. I think so.
Why?
For different reasons, right? Which is that male and female are fundamental realities of humanity, and indeed of all vertebrates, with a couple of weird little exceptions where it's still male and female are realities, and just a few species have ditched the males and are all female now, but they're still female, right? But for humans, male and female are realities and has been for the hundreds of millions of years of our lineage that we've been reproducing.
She's not a very good biologist. She's a biologist, right?
And
Disgraced former biologist, HK. She's a talk show host.
Okay, because she's not a very good biologist if she thinks like sex works the same in all vertebrate species. It very much does not. There's a huge range of how sex works and the number of genders, not genders, the number of sexes / genders.
I don't know. And the thing about acting is that that these are actors, right? Like, I don't understand why there has to be, like, because they have all these other categories: best actor in a drama, best actor in a comedy, best actor in an action film. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know why they're talking about movies and acting. Like, what this, and like this, even if you were to grant some of what they're saying about sports, which, you know, you and I clearly don't necessarily share their view, as far as acting goes, I think it's really stupid. Really, really stupid.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you there. There's not really any reason to have a best actor and best actress.
Right. Just you could just increase the different types of movies that are included, so you could have the same number of categories and just have different kinds of movies. I think. Yeah.
And some acting roles may not be sexed, and those are some of the most interesting roles, honestly, right? Like, oh, that story could be embodied by a man.
I mean, it would kind of be like if we had two categories: best picture with a female lead and best picture with a male lead. Like, why?
Story, some character arc, some narrative arc, does then somewhat change, you know, how that story plays out and how that character develops and what the risks are and the realities and the history and, you know, all of these things, right? So there are different ways of manifesting in the world, even though you can have very sort of male-like female approaches to the world and very female-like approaches to the world that are in the opposite sex bodies of which they are. But in general, I would say that categories by sex for acting make sense. But how about sculptors? No, right? Like even though...
Well, what's the difference between why is the difference between a sculptor?
They have, on average, a different approach to sculpting based on your maleness or your femaleness. How about for screenwriters? Well, no, and we don't, right? We don't have different categories for male and female.
But this all seems very arbitrary.
How about Nobel Prizes?
Yeah.
No.
It is very arbitrary.
So
she's making a very good point that we need to abolish the sex differences in these weird awards.
I think I can see an argument, kind of.
She's not actually making that point, but she's accidentally making that point.
Then it's kind of affirmative action for women, in music, right? If it's an historical artifact in which it's a recognition that female musicians didn't really have an ability to get recognized, to get seen, and so we're going to create an award category to help women get seen. Well, that's different from it was necessary that men and women had different categories for music awards because male and female music is different. And so
Wait, what? No.
to exactly what you were going to jump the gun here on, which is,
I mean, to that extent, then we absolutely should have an NB category, right?
Sex. And I think there's actually a third, but
right, we should have a best NB artist
that are detailed.
I don't
in
know.
a sort of list of like, yes for sports, yes for acting, no for sculpting, no for Nobel Prizes, no for screenwriting. Music is a questionable one. One of the reasons to have different categories by sex is because men and women are different, and their skills and talents manifest differently in the world, and so they're judged on different scales or variables. And
men and women in
the
general
ways that
are
men and
different,
female- that men and females.
like on
Males and
average,
females, men and
but there is a
women
huge
manifest in the world
overlap between
is a
them, and I feel like
distribution rather than a binary, right? Like
these two never talk about that overlap.
And it just seems, like I said, it all seems very arbitrary as to why a musician and not a sculptor. Like they've just decided that.
Yes.
Well, okay. What if I said yes, sculptor, no musician? Then what?
Well, you're not in charge of giving out the awards, so I guess nothing would happen.
And there's like really no equivalent of the Grammys for sculptors, I don't think either. Like nothing that's televised.
Yeah. And I think she's upset that the people who are in charge of giving out the awards made a decision that was different than what she would make.
I believe that's generally their position on these things. Yeah. And like I said, I don't know why the Grammys collapsed it down. They may have put a press release out about it, but these two, having so much else to do all day besides their show, couldn't have even looked to see if maybe they could figure out why they collapsed the best artist down.
male and female are binary, and the ways that maleness and femaleness manifest in the world are more or less finite normal distributions in terms of how it is that we show up in the world, but it's about physical and biological and frankly sort of population level statistical reality. And then the second reason to have categories is, again, to fix an historical wrong. I
think that would probably be the only reason I would agree with.
Discriminated against, and the categories serve to right historical inequality. And if that's the case for a particular thing, as women reach parity, or it's clear that in some particular field it's not going to happen for reasons having nothing to do with bias, those categories should be disappeared. And they certainly shouldn't be clung to because it's always the way we've done it. If they were about fixing an historic wrong as opposed to about recognition of an underlying reality that isn't going to change, no matter how many people walk around saying that.
I feel like I would agree with her in terms of sports if maleness and femaleness were something that we could measure, or at least measure accurately. We can measure weight class. That's why there's weight classes in wrestling, right? So because it would be unfair for an 80-pound wrestler to wrestle a 250-pound wrestler.
So my take on this is that this is a matter for the sports regulating bodies to take up.
Yeah, but to the extent that I do agree with the difference, having different female and male sports, I think the category is wrong. It's not. It shouldn't be women's sports and men's sports. It should be something else, because there's no accurate way to measure whether someone is a woman or a man, because there's no real definition for it. There are a lot of different definitions, and which definition you want to choose determines how people are going to fall into the two different categories, right?
I just feel like until you, me, Heather, or Bret end up on a sports regulating body, that what we're doing, this entire conversation is kind of pointless and useless. I think the sports regulating bodies have thought deeply about this and understand the dynamics of the sports that they're regulating better than any of us do, and I just generally trust them to do a decent job at that.
Well, I think Isaac in the chat just brought up a really good point. Accidentally, they said a woman is a person born with a uterus. Okay, so if you have a person who is born with a vagina, all of the reproductive system of a female, but no uterus, is that a woman or is that a man? According to that definition, it's a man, right?
Yeah, I think we're like very, very bogged down in something we've talked about like 100 times on here. And
true.
I'd like to kind of stay in, like, for me, I like to kind of stay in the things that I know. And as far as sports and how they're regulated, I'm just going to say again that the sports regulating bodies are probably doing a fairly good job of regulating sports, and that this conversation is generally about people at the very top echelon of sports. Most people that play sports and do sports never reach that point, and so it kind of doesn't matter. They're doing it for camaraderie, for fun, for exercise, and to that extent, there's really no regulating body anyway because it doesn't matter. And people should definitely play sports, and we should not be discouraging people from playing sports for exercise, camaraderie, community. And that's kind of where I'm at on it. The regulating bodies only come in like when there's like money or like prizes or some shit involved, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like a very, very low percentage.
So let's unpack a couple of those.
Yeah.
And I want to add an example that I'm frankly not even sure how it works, but billiards, competitive billiards. Is there men's and women's billiards, or do men and women compete on the same playing field in billiards?
I do not know the answer to that. My guess would be same playing field, but I don't know.
Yeah, that would be my guess too, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Zach's going to bet for us.
I'm not
You had all day to do your show.
even 60% sure of that.
Billiards competitions, male versus female, something like that.
And I also want to add an odd exception. Maybe it's one of several, but American football, right? There is no women's American football, right? There's men's and women's soccer, interestingly. I would guess rugby is like football.
Well, that's because there's no men's American football.
No. There's college
Women aren't
women's rugby.
disallowed from the
anyway,
teams.
It is interesting that...
Well, and then you have baseball and softball, right? Like women.
No, women play baseball too, you idiot.
Yep.
I mean, certainly some women play baseball sometimes,
Yeah.
but I don't think that there's professional women's baseball.
Sometimes.
If you're playing
Sometimes
that
some
kind of
women
game
play
as a
baseball.
woman, professionally, you're playing softball, and men also play softball,
Right.
But women don't also play baseball, I think.
Right. Now, I don't think I ever saw a league of their own, but am I right that women were playing baseball during the war?
I thought it was softball, but I don't remember.
Well, in any case, there's an interesting landscape here. Why don't we have women's football? Why is the logic of soccer not the same logic as American football? There's a question about
Didn't we have
whether or not
women's football in like an extremely sexist way for a little while?
Oh, you mean like where they were basically wearing nothing instead of pads?
Yeah.
I think I remember something, but that could have also been like some satire that we're misremembering as something that really happened.
Yeah, true. It could have been.
So if men,
I think it was like the lingerie league or something.
sports that physical prowess is the question, then it's interesting that women's sports work. And I want to point out why I think they do. But
What do you mean what they work? What does work mean?
If the top men if no woman can compete with the top men in a sport, like let's say tennis, then the question is, why, if people are going to see the top tennis players, does women's tennis make sense? And the answer...
So you're talking about as a spectator sport, not as a sport. As a sport,
That's the distinction I was drawing too.
Right. No, I am talking
You're talking
about
about the spectation.
Yes, I'm talking about why it makes sense that we have, a men's and women's division at Wimbledon, for example. And I think the answer...
Expectation is not a word, incidentally.
What?
That's the word I used,
Oh.
expectation.
Expectation. I like it.
It's spectacle, I
Be
believe.
very persuasive. So,
Precisely.
yeah. So I guess my point would be, one of the things about, what is a sport? A sport is a a physical game in which the obstacles faced by the competing parties.
Does it have to be a physical game? What about esports?
Right. So you can't play soccer on a slanted field. Or if you do, then the point is each side spends
You could play soccer in a V-shaped field in which the goals are at the end.
You could play soccer on a slanted field. If the field was slanted on the on one axis, it would just mean the ball would always go out on the left side or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you can play it on a slanted field and just, I think he was about to say it, just have each team take, each side of the field for half the time.
Right. It's the same reason that in American football, they switch sides at halftime or at the quarters, because maybe the wind's blowing or, the lights are a certain way in the stadium that might be distracting.
Yep.
A little bit like Ulama, the Central American ball game, but
oh yeah,
with the slanted sides. But anyway, put that aside for a second. The game neutralizes
now extinct, like Aztec, I think, or Toltec or something.
I believe it was actually passed down. The Olmec, the Toltec, the Aztecs all played Ulama, and Ulama still exists. It's just such a hard game that it's not.
When it's played now, though, it doesn't end in human sacrifice? Or?
No, not of either the winners or the losers, which I understand different cultures did it differently.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it didn't end in human sacrifice before. Pretty sure that's a myth.
Little hoop, like a basketball hoop, but it's up on edge, and the ball, I think, can only be passed around and launched.
Like, there may have been human sacrifice, but I don't think it was like a ritual involving the game.
And I just wonder if they're going to bring up Ultimate Frisbee, because I get big. Bret was an Ultimate Frisbee guy.
Okay, now that ancient Ultimate Frisbee did involve human sacrifice.
But that's just because if you got hit in the head with a stone Frisbee, you died.
But anyway, the point is, top women competing with each other is not inherently a much worse game than the top men pitted against each other, because they're even with each other. And so anyway, the
if
point
you're
is
interested in physical skill and prowess, if you're only interested in, speed and force, then the women's sport is not going to give you as much of that as watching men's sport. But in general, sport is not just about, sheer, speed and force, right? It's about skill and frankly, and this is, as I have said before, back when we were playing a lot of Ultimate.
Oh, dude, I called it. Did you see that?
You did.
I did. You have to believe me that I didn't suffer through fucking 45 minutes of this before we watched this on the show, right? You believe that I just guessed that.
Yep. And I'm pretty sure they're playing with the ancient rules where you sacrifice someone at the end.
That's why their kids don't play with them.
University of Michigan women's team for a bit, and then we played a lot of summer league, and captained co-ed teams, and also went to some day-long tournaments and such, and watched a lot of men's games, played in a certain number of women's games, and played way more co-ed games and captain co-ed teams, and by far for me. Now, obviously, I never played on a men's game, but by far the most interesting of those was the co-ed games, because men left to their own devices on the field were much more likely to just like huck it long. One guy runs down, maybe he gets to lay out, and it's awesome for those two guys.
Dude, I can't believe I nailed them. To be fair, I was only half right. I didn't know that she was into Ultimate Frisbee too. I just got big Ultimate Frisbee vibes from Bret.
If it's a full, thing, there are 5 people. Is it 5? It's been a while. 7, right? 7 people on the team?
Don't recall.
Oh, goodness.
It's been that long.
Yeah. The other people on the team, but the points are short, and it's, to the victor go the spoils sort of thing. And by contrast, the women's only games are much more likely to involve very short passes, much more cautious, less risky.
To the victor go the spoils, and to the loser, ritual human sacrifice.
Long or run and dive into the end zone is much less likely to have the opportunity, and there's also much more of a focus, and this will come as a surprise to no one probably in our audience, even if you have no idea what Ultimate Frisbee is that on women's only games and on women's only teams, there's much more of a focus on let's make sure everyone gets to handle the disc. And let's make sure that everyone ends
It's
up
always better when everyone handles the
actually, this
disc.
is competition.
So this is in any team sport, you will find that the teams that tend to win are the teams where everyone on the team is actually playing. That's the point of a team, right? Otherwise, there'll be one person who's exceptionally good or whatever, but the point, like if you have somebody that's exceptionally good, you can then surprise the other team by not giving them the frisbee and letting somebody else who's quite good have the frisbee and participate and excel as well. That's the point of a team.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to get at is that good teams have good teamwork.
Right. And good teamwork in, a game, Ultimate Frisbee, where you pass the frisbee to people would generally mean that everyone does handle the frisbee, assuming that they're, at least somewhat capable of handling the frisbee. Because then if you have one really good player, like I said, the other team will focus too much on the one star player or whatever, and you can be fucking sneaky. And the person who isn't a star, who they weren't looking at, gets in a really good position to score or to give an assist to someone else. And boom, now you just fucking scored because the other team was focused on the person they thought was going to do all the fucking frisbeeing. This is like, it's called teamwork.
That's not supposed to be one of the main things. And so you have these these slightly too much, almost caricatures of maleness and femaleness in an all-male game of Ultimate and an all-female game of Ultimate. And because this is not supposed to be a contact sport, and it really does work as a co-ed game, and usually
not until the end where someone is sacrificed
3 women, something
by
like
contact.
You got to be matched up pretty well
with the disc.
You actually reduce some of the silliness of the extreme all-male and all-female exigencies when you're playing together.
Right.
And it's fantastic.
But it is neutralized structurally as part of the game. Ultimate is a strange game because
it's very interesting that every team works exactly like what she said, that there is no nuance or gray area in male and female sports. That all teams of all males work exactly like she just said, and all teams of all females do as well.
And it kind of
very interesting.
It kind of harkens back to that bullshit Jordan Peterson talks about the difference between men and women. That women are more open, but less, I don't know, technically capable or whatever, I suppose is, and I might be butchering his argument, but whatever. Fucking tagline of the podcast is we come to it in bad faith. So butcher we will. And so yeah, she's literally just rehashing this sort of gender or sex essentialist argument that Jordan Peterson makes, but in the context of Ultimate Frisbee.
Yeah, it's shocking to me how these people can't see past generalities. Their idea, their view of an entire gender, half the population, is that 50% of the people in the world work exactly this way. And it's no, they just fucking don't. Even in Ultimate Frisbee, teams of all women and teams of all men work differently depending on the team and who's on the team. It might be in general, maybe what she's saying is right, but it certainly doesn't apply to every team.
Well, and if what she described is true, then in the male Ultimate Frisbee, all you have to be able to do is defend against one play.
Yeah, exactly.
So you'd think another team might figure that shit out, and then figure out that somebody might figure out that, hey, we should actually do this differently. Let's be a little bit strategic here.
Yeah, imagine if what she was saying is true, and just every time a male team played against a female team, the female team just fucking decimated them.
Right? They got
500-0.
They got one play, just like certain people only have one joke.
Yeah.
Inclusiveness and fairness. They're the game actually has the rules written in that if somebody doesn't understand a rule, play stops and the rules explain and all that. So anyway, the point is, structurally, in Ultimate,
I don't know if you can score 500 points in Ultimate Frisbee. I don't know how the game works.
Even number, you wouldn't have the preponderance of women on one team. That would be an unfair game. There is a tendency to balance the number of women on each side, and there is a tendency for players, not necessarily by sex, but players to match up with a player of similar skill and speed, so that one person is not fully shutting down the other person. So the point is the game.
And if you don't have that, then you do a different kind of defense. You don't do a man-on defense. You do a zone defense or something. Because if you don't really have roughly, I mean, and this is more in a strictly competitive situation, right? Like, okay, are we out here? Are we doing pickup?
Well, like, isn't that the point? That it's not always just like
the other team,
the men defend against the men and the women defend against the women? That there's like gray area in between. If you have like a faster than average woman and a slower than average man, if the average for men and women is like this far apart and then they're here, then they would be matched, right?
You know what? I don't know. I'm just really proud of myself for predicting that Bret was into Ultimate Frisbee. I'm just like, I'm like glowing. You can't see it. The camera isn't good enough to pick it up, but I'm literally glowing right now. The thing about this is that, like, they're talking about basically pickup games or like an intramural league or whatever, where everybody's there to like have fun. There's no fucking, there might be like a prize or something, but the prize is like a $50 fucking gift certificate to Shake Shack, right? So like
yeah, that's a good prize.
And that's not a bad prize. I mean, even with inflation, right? You go there, what, 4 times maybe?
Well, I wouldn't go there because I'm allergic to milk, but if I didn't want to breathe,
they have other
definitely
items at Shake Shack. It's a hamburger joint, dude.
I would go there.
Some of you people who I was just trying to brutalize are going to be on my team. Like, yes, I'm on a team right now and I want to win this point because that's fun. And that's kind of why I'm out here. But I'm also not interested in like, oh, let's line up with you who I know I can take and outrun. And then the point's going to be over really fast.
Yeah.
It's not interesting.
Not interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to try to gain an advantage over another player in a competitive sport? What the fuck?
I think the really interesting one here is the acting one. And your question is a great one about why the acting.
Before we go back to acting, though, because I actually...
She's like, we got to relive our glory days of Ultimate Frisbee for a little longer here, Bret.
You kind of predicted one of the other places I wanted to go, and maybe we'll end
it's,
on acting.
It's true, though, that men are
in the
faster
Seattle
actors
Times,
than women, I think.
A couple weeks ago, January
right?
22nd.
On
there's an
average, a man
article
acts faster
called,
than a woman.
Headline,
like in a play or a movie.
The Eddie plans
in an adult film, probably.
Return after 7 years, and
You got me there. That's actually
I've never
probably
watched
accurate.
a contest. I don't know very much about it, despite having grown up in Los Angeles. But one of the things that they say in here in this article, and I have failed.
You took my sarcasm and turned it into just regular.
I believe
chasm.
Ever they're inviting women to compete. So this is not going to be the Eddie, and maybe this has already happened at this point. I think this has been long enough. For the first time, it's not going to be just a male-only competition. And I thought, okay, so we have as the reasons that I had come up with for why there need to be categories by, under what conditions there should be categories by sex. In those situations where men and women are just fundamentally different enough that combining the sex categories would mean that women wouldn't get to play, basically. There is the historical reason for like, oh, we're going to right some wrong, and so make sure that women get voice here. And then there's this is about human versus nature. And so I looked into how it is that surfing.
Wait, Ultimate Frisbee is about human versus nature?
I think they've changed the subject back to like, I don't even know. Forget it.
Right. So there's a lot.
I'm not going to pretend I know where they're at now.
Scores are mostly dropped, and I'm sure it's different in different.
I got hit by a big block of nude beach.
Luckily, we're quickly approaching the hour and 20 minutes where we put a fork in whatever the fuck we're watching, change the color of the lights, I grab a cocktail, and then we watch some other infuriating content. And this week, whatever infuriating content we watch in the post game will honestly be a fucking deliverance.
I can't believe that they have talked for almost an hour and they've said almost nothing. What they did say was transphobic, but that was like, it took them 50 minutes to say something just transphobic. That was it. That's all they said.
Assessing on a number of things, like how many maneuvers they use and how, obviously if they if they wipe out, that's not good. But there are measures of like, apparent power, apparent strength, apparent fluidity on the wave.
Cool. Let's categorize sports by that then.
To male surfers. But if a competition is on a particular day at a particular break, and apologies, I'm probably not using exactly the right words here, but there will be different waves that happen at 10 a.m. versus 2 p.m., of course. But if it's your turn to go out, part of what you're being assessed on is like, which wave did you choose? And the waves are the waves. Then it's human against nature, which is remarkable. And in this case, like, well, men may have a little bit of an advantage, but really, like, what are you going to do if you're going to call surfing a sport? And this gets back to the question of like, what is a sport?
Surfing's a sport.
Surfing a sport.
Surfing is absolutely a sport. In what way is it not a sport?
You're going to have to introduce some social means by which you're assessing. Whereas if it's it's ulama in Mesoamerica, or ultimate frisbee, or American football, or what everyone else calls football in the rest of the world, soccer, where there are formal rules. It's there are dimensions and specificity.
We call it football too. We just shorten it. Soccer stands for association football.
Or shape and density of the ball or the disc or whatever it is, and how it is that you score and what the conditions are.
And football in America is short for gridiron football.
It's a little bit like human versus nature, but controlled. It's like we've domesticated war. It's domesticated war at some level and been like, okay, now let's play at this.
It's a laboratory sport in the sense that the laboratory purges all of the extraneous influences as much as possible so that you can see the effect. And a tennis court is similar to this.
Yes.
Whereas, it's like the difference between gymnastics in the Olympic sense and parkour, which makes use of things that are non-standard.
Yes.
But I did want to...
you wanted to go back to acting.
Well, before that, I wanted to point out that there are two male-female asymmetries that could result in the need for a female category in sport. Mm-hmm. One of them might have to do with the fact that males have an advantage because the sport depends on strength and things like that. And my guess would be this is somewhat relevant to surfing, but mm-hmm. There's a question about if you scaled the board down so that it was the same ratio of person to board. Maybe it's not. On the other hand,
I don't know.
On the other hand,
you could have looked into surfing before your show.
To the extent that something is highly competitive, it might be that if you didn't have separate male and female categories and you were looking at elite players, mm-hmm. that women would not get there because a much smaller pool of them would ever have tried the sport. And so
that's that Jordan Peterson shit.
That show up would be much smaller, and so the number of people who would be able to do it at an elite level, having nothing inherent to do with their capacity, just having to do with the fact that the competitive modality would tend to census more widely amongst men.
All right, that's as good a place as any to put fork in the podcast. He's talking, that's right there. He ended on that Jordan Peterson shit where like women are better at cooperation, basically, and it's not. The idea is that it's genetic and not that we have wrongly socialized men and women in dramatically different ways over the course of history. And that has inertia. I mean, there's nothing, I'm not saying that doesn't have inertia, right? But like, it's not, I don't think there's any evidence that it's genetic, that women tend to be more cooperative in maybe like a workplace environment, is what Jordan Peterson tends to talk about. I think it's because it's just real simple. If a man is assertive, they're like, he's a go-getter. He's aggressive. He's a good salesperson or whatever it is. Right. And if a woman's assertive, up until very recently, you could just call her a bitch at work.
Yeah. Or say she's like shrill. And it's like, you would never call a man shrill, even if he did the exact same thing.
Unless they're gay. I'm sure that somebody has called me shrill. I bet we could go through the YouTube comments.
Possibly. But yeah, you said up until recently, but that's not up until recently. That's also current. Currently, like in a lot of workplaces, that's how men talk to each other.
Right. And, we don't know what happens if we remove these kinds of socialization factors from the equation, because we haven't done it. So the idea that women are less competitive and saying it's by nature is just stupid. It's like it's like a claim without evidence. It's also non-falsifiable, because what could you tell these people to prove them wrong? We don't have the counterexample. We don't have the other society in which we haven't, wrongly socialized young boys and young girls in a very different way. I came from an enlightened household where my sister and I were not socialized in this way. My sister is a very competitive person, and I'm competitive in a way too, but not in this. I think she's more competitive than I am as far as like her career, in academia. She was more competitive than I was at all times. And I mean, I don't know. Is that genetic? Who fucking knows? She was the second child. Maybe she felt like she had to be more competitive because she was the second child. Who fucking knows? There are just so many factors in how competitive you're going to be, that to just boldly claim that it's because you're what Bret would call a man, that you're more competitive, and you'd be less competitive because you're what Bret would call a woman. It's just a claim that has no evidence behind it. And and it's a claim that honestly like really fucks shit up. Not necessarily in sports so much, but sure, probably in sports, but really in things that like matter to more people, like the workplace, how you make your money, how you make your living. And I hope we can get past that shit. I really do. I don't think it'll be in my lifetime, because I don't have that much time left here, right? I'm halfway through my life there. But I don't know. I smoke and I drink shit. Maybe I'm more than halfway through my life.
I hope not.
Well, I'm 46, dude. 92 wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, but I hope you're not more than halfway through your life.
Well, if I lived to 91, then what?
Then I'll be very sad that you didn't make it to 92.
What if you only make it to 74 and you're not here to find out?
Oh, then I won't care.
Yeah, you'll be dead. You'll care as much about my death as you did about my birth. Anyway, you want to read us out, HK?
Yeah, that was really well put. So I agree with all that. So we have we do the show every Wednesday at 7 p.m. On Twitch at twitch.tv/Echoplex Media. If you want to listen live, check us out there. There are also other shows. You can find all the shows at echoplexmedia.com. And if you want to toss us some money, you can do that over at patreon.com/Echoplex. And this is Boomers by Periscope.